Hello, welcome back to RP-0 America. We are in the process of achieving our first, I believe is our first, recorded geostationary orbit. So we've got to a low parking orbit. Really nothing special about the launch up to this point. Lots of history discussion, etc. in the first video. I encourage you to go watch it. But really, like, at this point, we've just got the right craft into a pretty standard low Earth orbit. So we have a node set up. That's another key thing we did in the last video, which is at this point here, time to equatorial descent node, which, weird, time, node time says 9 minutes. That says something about 10 hours? I don't know about that. I'll ignore that number. But anyway, we have a node set up here. Oh, maybe it's, nope, no idea why it's saying that. All right. Alright, so we've got it set up to do a burn at this point just over the equator down here, and it will put us into a geostationary transfer orbit, which is unique, where we'll have a high point out here at a roughly geostationary altitude. And I'm going to attempt to use MechJeb to carry it out. I'm excited to see this lead time indicator. I'd have to do a lot of testing to truly figure out all the details of it, but I am excited to see it. So this all looks good. I did a quick test, and of course, saying that, it might fail now, but I did let it carry out this burn, and it seemed to carry it out just fine in a quick test. So let's see if it does it as we would want it to. So how is the electric charge? Oh, nice. The electric charge was actually increasing when we were at time warp, which confuses me. Just oh, it must be enough sun coming in and hitting the panels over here. I was going to say, because the panels are kind of just pointed back at the craft at the moment, and so I wouldn't expect it to get a large amount of electricity. All right, so we are approaching the window. So this engine doesn't need ullage, so it's not like the most crazy, difficult test of MechJeb here, but I've just had all kinds of weird little issues with it once in a while, but I really do love to use its auto execute because it can make decisions way faster than I can. It can decide when to shut down to hit the target time. It does a way better, it should be able to do a way better job of bracketing the burn time, so that half of the delta V is before the node moment, half of the delta V is produced after the node moment, or I just bracket the time half and half, which I know is inaccurate in pretty much all cases. Unless I'm doing like a 10 meter per second burn on a Gemini, say, where the thrust to weight ratio doesn't really change over the burn. In that case, it's fair to divide the time half and half. But here you can clearly see the delta V, or sorry, the G-force, the thrust to weight is substantially changing as we burn substantial amounts of fuel here, because we are carrying out a pretty high energy burn. So at the end of the previous video, I said, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to stick with that, I intend to keep, to hold on to this transfer stage, because it will still have plenty of hydrocene in here, which I can at the very least use to spin up the craft before I use the solid. Spin stabilization for using a solid engine is a well-trodden historical path. It's a useful and smart thing to do, since the solid engine and the solid nozzle here doesn't gimbal. I don't know if there are solid nozzles in reality that have the option to gimbal. I mean, it's in theory possible, like for upper stages. Many first stage booster engines have the ability to gimbal using interesting technology. It's not an obvious necessary thing for a solid rocket to have, but it's a possibility. I was kind of curious if any upper stage engines ever have. Okay, so it's approaching the burn end, and it looks like it shut down the engine, said it was happy enough, and deleted the node. So let's see how close were we to what we want. So we want to be at 35786 according to the wiki page on geostationary orbit here. So let me just bring this down a bit. Because it's so far away from the Earth, you can see I'm getting a pretty low G-force here. Oh, did I think I fixed that? Yeah, I closed these tanks. I locked these tanks. Okay. So I'm getting a pretty low thrust here, but it's having a substantial effect out here because it's such a... Am I looking at the numbers right? Yeah, 35786. Oh, I see. I remember when I was doing the quick version of this, I was just using this number, not actually looking at it here, which is why my brain was just a little confused. So it also seems to intercept. This is a test craft I did, and apparently I didn't revert after my previous test to kind of get rid of this, but you can see I've kind of done a proof of concept of this for myself, just not recorded. All right, so we went from the low parking orbit. This was kind of the second burn, and we don't really have any fuel left in this. That's just not an appreciable amount. The next burn we're going to want to do is like nearly 2,000, about that. Nearly 2 kilometers per second, or 2,000 meters per second. So we won't really be burning this engine again, although technically we could. But I do plan to retain this stage so that when we get up to the point up here, we can spin up the stage. So let me just set this maneuver such that it matches this time pretty closely. So let's close that. So I want maneuver node editor. There we go. Because then I can just kind of poke the time. So I can just poke this. There we go. And that's within 30 seconds. Let's go down. I can probably get closer. Geostationary orbit is all about precision. Oh boy. However it is. Okay, so that's good enough for me, and it looks like it is pretty close to my apoapsis, within a minute or a couple minutes, so that's good. So I might still require a correction, and also let me look at, so this is just, I was looking at the wiki. I wasn't currently looking at the contract requirements, so let's look at that. So periapsis has to be above that, so if this were to become my periapsis, it is above that. Inclination below 3 degrees, I'm nowhere near that. That is a correction I'm going to have to make. So let me just quickly do a save there. And the period has to be, there's a 4-minute window there. So I can't just be geosynchronous, I think would be the right word, if I were to just do a burn forward to bring this apoapsis, or bring the periapsis up to match my apo. So this is, close-ish. So I can't just do that burn and then take a look at the, what is my orbital period? There we go, that is, I do have it in there. So I can't just get the orbital period to be that, I also have to have a low enough inclination. So as you can see, just getting to about this orbit, plus minus, like so, wouldn't take the full amount of energy I have in the solid, but if I do this, so this is a plane change, I'm doing a combined burn. By no means do you have to, but if you think of, if you're familiar with vector calculus, or even say traveling around a triangle, right? If you are on the corner of a square block and you have the option of going, say north and then east to cross the block, you're going to walk a longer distance than if you just walked diagonal through the park. So here, by combining the two burns, they have a smaller overall sum of, in this case it's the velocity term, how much velocity I'll have to burn, rather than if I did it as 2 separate burns, like going, along one side of the triangle, or along one side of the block and then the other. If I just travel through the center, by combining those 2 burns into one, it's going to be a smaller burn requirement. Now you can see I need to do plenty of adjustments still, because I still need to, oh boy do I ever. Just the way these add isn't easy on the brain. I'm just kind of doing these small corrections until I get them about right. I don't know if there is a MechJeb thing that will say, go from GTO to Geo, but I'm fine just doing this by hand. So let's see, 36, so that's a little high. Is this going to be, so this is going to be my peri, so that will be a little low, but I don't want to do a, Okay, so I'm going to hope that my existing orbit is close enough that I can kind of trust it. So 3450, so that's a little low. That's probably just a dash high, so I might actually have to do a little bit of radial off burn. Weird, now that's lower. See, maybe I've done something wrong. Weird. Maybe that other burn just wasn't circular enough, and that's why it wasn't. Ooh. All right, well those are things I'm going to have to figure out. 3570, that might be a correction. Okay, what if I just, radial, let's just cancel the radial component, because I can probably do this without a radial component, which is what I was adjusting there with the blue. I believe that's radial. So maybe I just need to burn a little more or a little less. So let's see, 35, so okay, I need everything to be above 35,700. Okay, so let's do a little more burn there. 35,200, 3, and that's not bringing that up too much. So I'll probably have to do an adjustment. Oh, well, that's above that, so I believe. Oh, very slightly under. Okay, there. So now that's above. So that's a little high, but it's not too bad of a burn. So that is, that also suggests that I'm going to have too much fuel in this solid, which is unfortunate, but hey, that's why I'm bringing along all that extra delta V in the geostationary probe itself. But that's pretty good. So this does satisfy a couple of the key conditions of the contract, which I feel are often some of the more difficult ones to complete. So I'm getting what looks like a pretty equatorial orbit. I'll be able to confirm that once I do the burn. I don't know if there's a way to look at for MechJeb or something to tell me what the parameters of the orbit I'm targeting are, as in what will be my orbital parameters after the burn. That might be a handy thing to have, though. My eccentricity should be low enough. My periapsis, none of my points here will be below that, so that is great. And inclination looks like it's equatorial enough. So the period is something I'm going to have to refine. I might have to refine a couple of these other ones as well, but it looks like a good start for a burn. So we are swinging away from the Earth. Looks like over the east of Africa. Yep, that's Madagascar. And this is as close as this probe and rocket upper stage will ever be to Earth again. All right, so first let us save. All right, and then tell it to, okay, let's go to lower RCS by hitting cap lock, as you can see there. And I've told it to point to the node. So that will be our next step. I don't have a flare on the sun. I wonder if maybe I've mucked up some update mods. I definitely have been spending like an order of magnitude less time making sure I've got updated and functioning set of mods than I used to. Busy, busy. Okay, so let's point it there. Pretty good. It would. So on one hand, I could just spin up right now. I remember seeing Nathan Kell do that in a previous video, which is why I'm hesitating doing it, because once you spin up, all kinds of interesting things that could happen over the next 5 hours. So it's pointed, it's close enough. I'm going to just save. I'm pretty sure turning on SAS doesn't cause it to lock to the position like it used to. So I'm going to wander relative to that, I'm pretty sure. But I can live with that. So we just don't want to blow by that node. That's really what's key. And I'm not going to tell MechJeb to carry this out at present because it's a unique burn, sort of what I'm doing here. Okay, so I just want to make sure I'm not running into battery power. Good, and then the sun came back. We're still losing power over time, in part because we're still having to power the avionics unit on this puppy, but thankfully it looks like it's pulling power out of that. No, what have I done? Whoa, did it just change orientation? Maybe my camera changed orientation, but anyway. I was approaching that way faster than I thought I was. I don't know if the craft just jumped or the node jumped, but whatever, something crazy happened. So, whoa. Okay, node. Tell it to point at node. Wow, so it's thrusting so hard it's having a pretty substantial effect on my periapsis, but kind of equal and opposite reactions to some extent, and it's canceling back out in the other direction. All right. So let us point in the desired direction now that we're so close to the burn time. Good news is, so one reason to use a solid for this, compared to any liquid engines I have access to at the moment, is that you can set it up to, sorry, it's a procedural solid, so I kind of adjusted it to have about the delta V that I expected to want, and I set it to have a large nozzle and a short burn time. So it's going to have a pretty high thrust-weight ratio, but it's nice because it means it's way easier to bracket a 12-second burn rather than a long burn to complete this, because this is a pretty substantial amount of delta V to deliver. So if I was using a low thrust-to-weight ratio engine, it could take a long time to deliver that much energy, that much delta V. So solid could deliver that burn over a short period of time with, compared to a lot of the other technology I currently have unlocked. Okay, so that's fairly nicely pointed. Looks good to me. I'm fairly happy with how that's pointed. Okay, quick save, and let's try to spin this puppy up. So use what remains of my RCS here to it's It's already wandering, which is no fun. Must mean something in this is not the center of mass isn't right down the axis, something like that. Or maybe I was still wandering when I started spinning up. Unfortunately, oof, it's wandering off really hard now. That's not cool. That's not cool at all, man. All right, so let me just quickly load and check something else out, because I want this to be a good burn. So I'm going to turn on an indicator that I used for docking. Actually, I might just be able to pull up the docking window and have it in there, where it shows the angular velocity of my craft, so I can more finely null out my rotation before spinning up. Okay, so mech custom windows geo final docking. Okay, yeah, that's so. My angular velocity is pretty low right now, as you can see. It's not 0. Oof, it was pretty close to 0 actually, compared to me trying to adjust it now, getting nowhere near where I was. Okay, just like it's non-linear. Holding it for say 10 units of tiny time rather than having it tapped for 10 units of tiny time are not equated. Okay, so maybe these thrusters just aren't on symmetrically. Something's unhappy. Something is rotten in the state of RCS here. But I can probably hopefully spin this up. Clearly I did a test that wasn't a perfect geostationary orbit before I went on vacation, so something must have gone wrong. So I guess the only way to find out what that was is just to do the wrong thing again. Let's find out together. All right, so spin that up so I can, oh, jeez, over the window. So those angular velocities, so the two terms that don't account for my current rotation are still really small. So it looks like it's around the center of mass. Just for some reason, it doesn't seem to be nicely pointed at my nice pointy vector anymore, which is odd. But hey, whatever. So I also don't quite know, is that truly right? So let's say 90 degrees per second. I feel like it's spinning more than that. I don't know. I always feel like this must be like some crazy number based on a radian rather than degrees. And I'm in green time, so like 90 degrees is, what, 1/4 of a circle. So I'd expect it to take 4 seconds to do a full rotation when it was at 90. So let's say when I'm at 180, let's just wait till we're at 180. All right, so at 180 I'd expect it to do a rotation every 2 seconds, which feels wrong. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. Maybe it is. Maybe it is, and I'm just a skeptic. Maybe I'm just like, I don't quite understand that, so maybe it's wrong. Maybe that's what I'm doing wrong. So it looks like my current direction of pointing is rotating around the direction I want to be pointed in, which is basically exactly what this is supposed to do, which is nice. So what else can I do before that burn time? So that burn time, you know, the node that we want to burn at is in 2 minutes, so we've still got some delta V, we've still got some time. One thing worth noting, I probably can't fix it really at this point, but the actual amount, so this is how much delta V is going to be delivered by my solid. Now you can tell that it is pretty substantially higher than the delta V that I actually need. So right now I'm burning backwards to actually increase the delta V that I'm going to need to output, because I can't, you know, there's two things, there's two factors, right? There's how much delta V is going to be outputted once I hit space on this solid engine. And then on the other side there is how much delta V I need. I can't change the solid, but I can change my needs by doing this. It's counterintuitive maybe, it's kind of backwards, but it's kind of the opposite of what you would usually do. Like if you knew your upper stage didn't have enough delta V to do the thing you wanted to do, you'd just try to set yourself up to get that delta V from something else. So that's kind of what I'm doing, just in reverse. So I'm just going to sit here and burn this hydrazine backwards. So you've still got tons of hydrazine. I put a lot of hydrazine in this Agena, because it just makes it makes it useful as a docking target, kind of a general purpose vehicle, to have a substantial amount of hydrazine in that Agena D. Alright, so I'm just going to burn backwards until we're at about 6 seconds to the node. So in constructing this craft, You know, I usually set things up and I usually forget avionics until the end. So I noticed that in adding this solid, I didn't have enough avionics to control the original craft plus this solid. And there's vaguely ways around that if you're a pre-thinker and you do things even more complexly than I do, like Nathan Kell does. So potentially, let's say, if I did everything I'm doing now, you know, I target everything while still retaining this for avionics, and then I just kind of burn the solid by right-clicking and setting it. Like once I ditch this stage, I would effectively have no avionics if I hadn't brought along this additional ring. Then I wouldn't have control of the craft except I think through the right-click menu. So I could have, you know, dumped this, not had this avionics unit, and then activated this engine. And that might be what Nathan Kell does, or what he would think to do. But I prefer to just bring it along, particularly since it seemed to be within my maths budget. I was able to drag along this additional avionics unit. All right, looks like we're ready to go. Decouple, don't need you anymore, and activate engine. And oof, we fly away. All right, and do we still have a good amount of power? Yep, let's close this mech jet window. Pretty much burn out all that solid fuel in a very short period of time. The G-forces are very high on that burn. All right, and now hopefully this doesn't have a huge... Oh, okay, well it looked like it did have a pretty substantial amount of oomph. I seem to still have control here, which is nice. So let me open up these tanks. Oh, I'm trying to... Yeah, I am not seeing an engine. So that must be what I did. Something about what I just did. Payload was heated by engine exhaust from solid. No, that's not the problem. Something about what I just did destroyed the engine on this, which is why I didn't achieve geostationary orbit. Haha, awesome. Okay, so that's what went wrong with the previous one. So I've got all the fuel here, I just don't have a main engine in order to launch me. Maybe I never did, but I'm pretty sure I did. I don't know. Sometimes I think I'm just crazy. So I can kill this spin, but right now, since I just want to slow down, like right now I just noticed if I look at my orbital parameters there, one of them is way higher than I want it to be because, you know, because of that the speed difference I had. Oh, okay, if I hit, I'm hitting space, and it doesn't seem to be staging those on, which is odd. Like, I'm currently using them. It doesn't seem to be staging them on, because I would expect, like, in the VAB, during construction, I was able to see how much delta V these engines would deliver, and I'm not seeing that right now. Let me just kill that, which is strange. But regardless, I can still kind of figure that out to some extent from the numbers I have access to. So let's look at the contract. Okay. I wish these stayed compressed, but they don't. But fair enough. All right, so period. Okay, so the period isn't long enough. Or it's too long? It's too long. It's too long by... Whoa. Okay, by many hours. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. So if I had an engine, this would probably be doable in a reasonable amount of time. In practice, it isn't. So if you can see, my current orbital period is a day and 3 hours, which is really long. In comparison, what I actually want for my period is just under 24 hours, 23 hours, 58 minutes. Interesting. So when I hover over these or these while holding N, to use this RCS, it doesn't cut off, but when I hover over a MechJeb window, it does. Interesting. I guess that makes sense. That might have even been a response to a complaint that I was making. Who knows? But it's going to take a while to bring that down, as you can see. Every second I'm bringing down my orbital period down a minute or two. But I'll keep doing this because, really, pretty much other than this, the video, either it's a failure or it is completed. So I'm not going to open up this dish simply for center of mass unknowns. Effectively, if I open up this dish, maybe the center of mass will stay centered, maybe it won't. But right now, it is centered, it's behaving nicely, and allowing me to just do this retrograde burn. And I also just want to make sure that I don't, by doing this burn over a really long period of time, I don't bump my periapsis below 35,700 kilometers. So what is my current eccentricity anyway? So I didn't hit it perfect by any stretch of the imagination. It's 1.8 degrees, which I might have enough delta V in here to correct. I could probably get a pretty good geostationary orbit with this thing. But that correction is something I should be able to figure out in the future. What I would usually do, again, it's a milder form of cheating. I would just say hyper edit a craft into a perfect equatorial orbit, and then set up a maneuver node so that I matched planes with that craft. And that's what I would usually do, right? So I would have an existing thing, which is made up target craft. I could take a piece of garbage and put it into that orbit or something like that. And that would make it easier to use MechJab and the other tools to match precisely the equatorial plane. Because I just kind of eyeballed to get to this to where I am now. In practice, you could probably do that a lot more precisely. So let's also try to, okay, first let us make sure, nope, looks like when I'm, oh good, okay, so I can just keep holding N when I'm out in this view and it will keep adjusting this. So I can basically do the same thing from this view. So let's try to figure out where we are. So it appears that we have achieved a geostationary orbit on the opposite side of the Earth. Like if I kind of center things, whatever is on the opposite side of the Earth from Venezuela, whatever part of the world this is. Northern South America. I'm pretty sure I landed near this mountain range at one point. Somebody said that was likely near Venezuela. So I'm going to say that's roughly where this is. So whatever the opposite side of the world is, our craft will be over. And at this time, on that side of the Earth, it is very clearly night. So we can't precisely tell what portion of the Earth we're going to be over. Yeah, I could maybe bring up a window, like add things to this where it told me my latitude and longitude, which might be handy for specifically answering that question. But because adjusting this window would not, I couldn't do that at the same time as the burn I'm currently doing, I'm not going to do that. I'll just kind of wait until we're on the right side. Like once, if my burn brings me below the periapsis that it's complaining about here, then I will run time forward until the part of the Earth that we are currently geostationarizing over is lit by the sun. But until then, I won't do that. And it looks like around the time of my the window for this video, my usual kind of half an hour aim, we might actually complete this. So I'll have to go look back at my video, my construction and such, to see how much of an insane person I am. Maybe I never actually had a central engine on this craft, but I thought I did. But thankfully I had this RCS on here, and the RCS happened to be powerful-ish enough that to do this final correction, it has the power to do so. This is very Yoda sentenced. We're a little low. So the period now is slightly long, so we have a couple corrections we'll have to make. But we thankfully have a good amount of delta V left. Okay, since you can, one way to calculate your delta V, so let's say, okay, let's do a terrible thing. So I'm going to hit V, so it's going to change my view so that the camera follows the craft. No, I want to follow the craft. Jeez, it does crazy things there. I'm pretty sure I want chase. Not locked. Okay, locked. That'll do it. So see, now the craft doesn't appear to be moving at all. Haha. So that allows me to do this. So I can pull up this RCS quads view. It tells me the ISP. So from this and knowing the difference between my dry mass and my fueled mass, I could calculate how much delta V I had remaining. And now let me move out of that abominable view. Okay, and I've got the solar panels pointed terribly, so that's another reason to not leave the craft as is. I don't recall. I think that is a little bit of a drain on power. Okay, so in order to fix things, periapsis above. So first I want to bring up my periapsis because I don't want to have to deal with it being below 35,700. So there. So now I can wait here. So wait 2 hours until we move over this point of the Earth, and then continue adjusting our orbit a little bit. Just by a little bit. So to do that, to actually point where the blue arrow is pointing, I'm going to have to despin. So let me do that and create the unfortunate space swastika. Is that the right? No, that's it's making me dizzy. Okay, let's look this way. Okay, I think that's... Oh, I can just... see, that's why I love these numbers, because I don't have to trust the intuition of what it visually looks like. By pressing Q, I am slowing down and making an abominable space swastika. So I apologize. Hopefully YouTube does not pick that up and suggest that as the as the cover, as the the album image for this. So I'm going to slow down this rotation. In practice, there's tons of different ways to do this. Nathan Kell mentioned in his video as well. Right now, I'm effectively wasting RCS. Like, you know, it's a waste to bring RCS all the way up to geostationary orbit just to stop the spin. One way to do that is a yo-yo D-spin, which I've talked about in some other videos, posted links, but it's totally worth looking up. It is a super cool and clever engineering solution to the problem of de-spinning a spacecraft. Yo-yo D-spin. Basically, you bring up some wire with a couple of masses, and the length of the wire and the mass of the masses is calibrated such that if you just release them, they are swung out on your craft that is spinning, and all the angular momentum of your craft is just passed into them. You release them off, you just give up those tiny masses that you've brought along, and it just gets rid of the spin. It takes away the angular momentum on your craft. It is a very brilliant idea. Curious if they still use it nowadays or not. Maybe for some craft. Okay, so we're kind of vaguely going to aim in this direction, and we're going to warp over here. Looks like it's going to be very slightly longer than the way than I like to make the videos. Okay, and we're not losing power. Oh, good. We might actually be pointed in a vaguely sane way relative to the sun, which is nice. So I don't have to worry too much about power. All right, so we're near this point. We don't have to be super precisely on that. This is just a fairly small correction burn, but we want to do it in the right direction. This might be this might be the exact wrong direction for all I know. Probably is. So if I hold H to thrust forward, and it looks like, oh no, good, I pointed in the appropriate direction. So that means I can just throttle up the engine. Ha! I love to just hit C and then not have to keep holding a key. Oh, and I must have brought my periapsis slightly too low. Am I not at my periapsis? Oh, okay. Nope. All right, I must have let myself get just a little too low. So now in rounding errors, it's considering my current altitude to be a little too low. But I can correct that off video. I don't need to make you sit around for that. So if you can see, there's no check mark here. See that I'm pretty close to this periapsis, so really, actually, let me try to correct this in short order, make sure I'm not going to run out my batteries. All right, so I just need to make this point slightly higher. If you can think about kind of bending the arc, I'm pretty sure that would be by doing a burn like that, question mark. So doing I think that's a radial burn. I'm terrible at remembering everything. That shouldn't have really much of an effect on the period of our orbit by burning precisely down that axis, just kind of on the shape. You can think about it in terms of doing work. See, if I'm not burning in the direction of motion or counter to the direction of motion, we're effectively not doing work. So we're not adding energy to our orbit. It's kind of changing its shape. Okay, so I want this number to be high. Oh, there we go. All right, it's happy. I'm happy. I've got enough delta V, I could probably bring this closer to 0, which in practice I might do some other time, since this craft can totally survive on its own. Ooh, and it's kind of sunny enough that I could vaguely make a guess of where I am. Somewhere. The Earth is so warped right now, I can hardly tell what's what, just because we're so far out. So let's click on the Earth and try to figure out where we are. Oh, I guess I am targeted. Oh, why won't it let me target on the Earth? Tab. Oh. What? Focus Earth. Okay. Oh, I see. Clouds. Okay, so there we go. So we can see where things are. Okay, so we're kind of over the this basin, the Sea of China, or the Sea of Taiwan, or something. Of course, I don't know my geography, so if anybody knows that or is willing to look it up. And because, okay, it's the last moments of the video, I'll actually pull this up so there's useful information for me or somebody else to actually look this up rather than just make uneducated guesses. or partially educated guesses. Surface, lat long, all right. And it'll pull that up very briefly so it can be seen. As you can see, so 2 degrees lat, that's going to vary between 2 north and 2 south, or 2.4 north and 2.4 south. Because of this, in practice I'd want to wait until I'm actually at one of these and then use a bit of my RCS to circularize. I may as well, I might do that off video because I find small orbital maneuvers like that relaxing. And longitudinally, that's where I am. So if I match this perfectly to this, is it sidereal day? Like with time, this longitude should stay the same. And if I had this inclination around 0, the latitude would also stay the same at about 0. In practice right now, because I have this latitude, if you think it's kind of easier to think about if it was completely the opposite, like if, say, my orbit was polar, like, let me just change this, like so, it's more obvious to see. Like if I had a one-day orbit that was like this, we would go over the pole and we'd kind of come back to being above the same point about once a day. And that's basically what we're doing here. We're just kind of varying by 1 or 2 degrees over the same spot over the equator in the day. I think it makes, there's a couple of different cool shapes it makes, depending on exactly how close your orbital period is to a precise orbital day or a sidereal day. One of them is, kind of a plus sign like, or a figure 8 like that, or it might just be straight up and down. Anyway, it would be a figure 8 like that if my orbit was not precisely rounded. It is currently not precisely round, so it would be a fairly small figure 8 in the sky, varying, and then the north side of the figure 8, being 2.4 north when I'm at that position, 2.4 north of the equator, and 2.4 south of the equator at the other side of it. So in the sky, my craft would be making a figure 8 in the sky. And so I want to bring that down to 0, and I'd want to make this precisely rounded at 35,786 meters per second, so I may as well do that for myself while listening to calm music. So thanks for watching. This has been RP-0 America, and we have successfully basically taken the nice probe that Shabs gave us, and we made small modifications to, and made it a geostationary satellite. Retract, extend. There we go. I want it to extend. There we go. We have made a geostationary satellite, which can gather enough solar power from these 4 panels to power its avionics unit, which is super cool. Thanks for watching RP-0 America. Goodbye.